Denman Rooke, what is your favorite game?
My favorite game is Dark Souls.
The reluctance. Slight reluctance there.
Yeah, is maybe Dark Souls. The first game console I probably remember playing was surprisingly the Atari. I think I remember I must have been like 4 years old. It was like my cousin Brad had it in like the basement of our grandparents' house, and I remember playing Joust. I think that was the first game I ever played, but as a kid, probably the first games I probably started playing were PC games. I'm trying to remember some of the early ones, but it might have been like Lemmings or I don't know, games like that. But then we got the first console I ever got was the NES, and how old that would have been, like the mid '90s. And I remember being obsessed with the first Super Mario. So I played that a lot, and had the Duck Hunt. So I played a lot of Mario, Super Mario 3. But yeah, I was kind of like obsessed with those, kind of games as I was kind of growing up. And when my family, we lived in India for a little while for my dad's work, and we had a PC. I don't think did we have the. I think we might have not brought the NES with us for that, because I remember mainly playing PC games when we were there, and it would have been, we had Prince of Persia, the old one, the one with that one was great. I only remember beating it like once, but I remember playing it for ages. That game was amazing. I remember being amazed by the animations in that game and the sword fighting. I felt like when I was playing that game, I thought it was like the most realistic sword fighting I'd ever played. That was a lot of fun. There was another game we had back then. It was called Fury 3. It was. Do you know this game? It was.
No, I can't say
it was
that.
like
No.
a. Yeah, it was. It was like it was a 3D game, and you were like a starship, and you kind of flew around these planets, and I think each world had these planets, and you just kind of shot like other spacecraft and stuff. But I remember really loving that game. It had a great soundtrack, I think. I'll have to. I think I remembered this game. I couldn't remember the name of it. I think it was last year sometime. I just, for some reason, something had sparked my memory of that. And I was trying to, I probably spent a couple hours just trying to figure out the name of that game. But yeah, and then I think at one point when we moved back to the States, we got an N64. And I remember playing a lot of that. And my friends in school, we weren't allowed to play violent games in our house, so we weren't allowed to play GoldenEye or any of those things. So we'd sneak over to our friends' houses and we'd play GoldenEye with them. But at one point, I think my dad didn't mind it so much, but he I hope I don't get in trouble saying this, but we were at the or it must have been like Hollywood Video. Was that the name of the place? But anyway, you could like rent video games at the video shop, and we were like, "Oh, Dad, this game's great, GoldenEye," and he's like, "Oh yeah, oh cool, that sounds fun." And we came home, and I think I forget where my mom was, but she was out of the house, and so me and my brothers were playing. I have three brothers, and we were playing multiplayer GoldenEye, and we are just having so much fun, and we were like shooting each other and stuff. My mom comes home and she kind of walks in the room and she's like, "What are you guys playing?" And it was like, all of us running around with like guns and stuff. And she's like, "What is this?" And then one of us gets shot and dies, and blood runs down the screen. And my mom was like, "What have you brought into this house?" Yeah. Anyway, we had to immediately return that. Yeah. But yeah, so that was fun. But yeah, so I don't know. I feel like I've gone on a tangent. What was the original question? Just how do I get into playing games?
Yeah.
I guess I've always been playing games. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh God, like that. I think that sort of sums it up. Just sort of having that sort of moment in GoldenEye where you're just sort of playing with your balls, and it's just say what you will about GoldenEye, sort of considering its sort of violence and all that. Like,
Yeah.
But you having sort of moment where your brothers and sort of playing it, just having fun and all that, and your mom just sort of walks and goes like, "What the hell is this foul playing doing in my house?"
Yeah. Yeah.
I will not tolerate violence in this house.
Yeah.
In any form.
Yeah. And I mean, it was so ridiculously cartoony. Like, it wasn't realistic. Even at the time, like, we were just having fun. It was, it wasn't much more than just like playing tag with each other. But it was just like, it was too realistic at the time for her and for her boys.
Has she seen anything sort of realistic since then?
I don't know. I don't know. She was. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, not that I could recall. I think most of the games we would have been like, racing games. I remember obsessing over, Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong Racing. I played that a lot. I think that was the first game I 100%ed. I unlocked all the characters. I unlocked the clock. If anyone's played Diddy Kong Racing, I unlocked the clock character. That's how dedicated I was. But yeah, and then played a lot of like the Zelda games. I really loved that. Oh, you know what? What sparked an old memory of a game I remember playing a lot was I'd seen people raving about the new Metroid Dread and just saying how it was like really good, and a lot of people think it's like one of the best in the series. And I was like, I've only played one Metroid game, and I think it was like one of the first Game Boy Metroids, and I remember loving that game. But also, I don't think I ever beat it because I got stuck. I couldn't find out where to go, and I was just like traveling around every portion of the map trying to find a secret doorway to like get to the next level, and I never got that far. But yeah, because I had Game Boy, original Game Boy, and I'd play a lot of those games. That had what was it? The Star Wars game. Again, I don't think I got that far. The original Pokemon, playing with my friends. I had Blue. Yeah, it's good fun. Good fun.
Christ, talk about your start in the game, at least playing games anyway. Like I feel it's like a massive crash course in its own way, especially considering how you basically sort of moved around the planet as well during the middle of that as well.
Yeah, like I had a bit of a weird childhood. Because my dad's from South Africa and my mom's from the States, but grew up in like India a bit. And then as a kid, like we lived in Grenada for a little bit. It's a bit weird to talk about, but my parents were they were kind of religious, and they were missionaries when I was a kid, and we lived on a boat, and we'd travel around, and they did like medical kind of help do medical work. But I'm not religious myself anymore, but like we kind of moved around. So when I was a kid, I wasn't even I grew up in on a boat, and then we moved back to the States, and I was there for a little bit. But then we moved to India because my dad was an engineer, and so his company was building a steel mill in India. So we lived there for a couple years, and my mom was familiar with India because she had grown up there a bit. Like her dad was born there. So it's like this weird, like, so it kind of like grew up in the States, but kind of not really, kind of all over the place. So it kind of always felt like a little bit, different, I guess, in that way. Like all my friends back home were, knew all the American treats, and I would come back and I'm like homeschooled, like, kid that, was American, but not really, because I didn't really know I didn't have all the cultural kind of like clues that maybe like other kids would have grown up with. But yeah, I don't know. Kind of going off on a tangent there, but.
Does that also sort of, considering the fact that your mother was a missionary, does that also explain the fact that, does that explain her reaction to when she saw you play GoldenEye as well? Probably.
Maybe. I don't know. Growing up it was like a religious household, but maybe it was a little bit like she was like, my dad didn't care so much. Like he was he had been in the Navy, but they kind of had to be at that time. But so like he didn't really care about that. But I think our house is like anything that was like super violent or something like that would have been like don't do that, not allowed in the house, or even anything like too I don't know, like we weren't allowed to watch like sitcoms or other various things like
anything too raunchy, basically.
Any too raunchy, or anything like that. Which is weird. But now, which is funny because now I work in video games, and the latest game I worked on has brothels and various things in it because it's like 1920s prohibition in Chicago. Just funny, but
that's the ultimate irony.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. But always kind of I was into games like as a kid, and it's funny because as a kid I would be kind of told like, oh, don't spend too much time playing games. I'd have to like get out. I'd only have like a certain amount of time I was allowed to play games. But now I look back and I'm like, but parents, it was worth it. See, now I'm making a living doing games.
It was justified.
Yeah. Getting into games. So I'd kind of been freelancing for a while. I was doing that for like 2 or 3 years. And then getting into video games, I'd been, freelancing. I had gotten my first kind of fantasy client was kind of consistent client was Paizo Publishing for Pathfinder RPG. So it's like a D&D kind of RPG kind of style thing. And I've been doing work for them for a while, and I was doing some work for a VFX studio in Pittsburgh. But I was kind of like, my wife and I wanted to kind of move abroad. We, kind of wanted to get out of the States and just kind of, live somewhere else. And I had Irish citizenship through my father. And so I was like, okay, let's start looking around for like different studios. I was looking in the UK for some stuff, and I was looking in Ireland. At the time, there wasn't a lot of studios in Ireland, but I'd been kind of like looking around. But and around, let's see, it would have been late 2012, I think.
You're literally just coming in as the boom sort of starts to slowly grow down south anyway. And this was like, I think a few months after EA had closed PopCap in Dublin as well.
Yeah. Yep. So PopCap. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but I was looking for work, and then I saw this studio in Dublin called Digit Games, and they had just I think when I saw them, they had been I'm not sure how long they had been around, but I think it was only a few months. But I saw that they were making this fantasy game, and I think they only had like one image up that they had got a freelancer on, but they had this banner, and it was like a dwarf in the snow or something like that with an axe, and I was like, oh, that looks cool. Yeah, okay. And so I sent my stuff out to them, and they were looking for a lead concept artist, and I'd been doing concept at this VFX studio, and doing a lot of illustration and fantasy work. So most of my portfolio at the time was fantasy stuff. And I was like, this looks cool. Dublin sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. And I sent them my stuff, and they're like, okay, let's have you in for an in-house kind of day test in a couple weeks. And I was like, okay, sure. So they flew me out to Dublin. I spent 2 days in Dublin. One whole day I kind of spent at the studio, kind of doing a test and like interviewing with a bunch of people. And then when I got back, they were like, gave me an offer, and they're like, hey, do you want to move over? And I was over in a month, and I was just like, holy shit. Like before, it's like within a month I was like, from Pittsburgh, and I was like moved over to Ireland. And so that was my first kind of foray into video games specifically. And it was yeah, it was cool. So it's like before that, I had only been doing, just my kind of niche kind of part of it, like just doing illustration or being given an art brief and just say, here's the concept art, or, here's, do an illustration, which is fun. And I still do that kind of work on, on the side with, Magic the Gathering and stuff. And that is a lot of fun. But it was my first time being in a studio where it's like, okay, it's more than just the art. I'm now a part of a team kind of building a fuller thing. And so, that's kind of what got me into video games, is to kind of like lead up into it.
And now you're doing you've just put out, well, not just put out, it was put out a year ago, but you put out Empire of Sin with Arrow Games. And it just won numerous awards at the Emirate Irish Game Awards, like a ton of them with Dreamfield and I found as of recording this.
yeah it's great. Empire of Sin was a lot of fun to work on. I was the lead artist on that project, and I did the art direction for it as well. That was a ton of fun. So that was the first project I was I kind of led, which was great. And the team I worked with were amazing. Bunch of great artists. But the awards. We won 3 awards. I think got best game design, best technical achievement, and best game art, which is great. I feel very, very excited about that, and very honored about that. So that's very lovely. But Empire of Sin, that was the last game I've worked on. We just released a new DLC for it as well. What would have been last month or this month? Under a month, I think. And that was a lot of fun to work on as well. So that's my most recent stuff. And the games before that, we at Digit we made Kings of the Realm, and then I worked on a good portion of, though I left before it was released, it was the Star Trek Fleet Command. And that game was a lot of fun to work on as well. But and then the other kind of projects I'm working on is I do since 2018, I think I do illustrations for Magic the Gathering as well. So when I have a bit of free time and at home, I take on a bit of that work just to keep my illustration skills up to scratch and all that stuff. Because as when art direction is a lot of fun, but I'm often kind of higher level and kind of more kind of looking at the vision of the game and making sure that everything is kind of cohesive, and doing a lot less of the kind of hands-on work of drawing. Excuse
me. So sort of another thing I want to touch on is, before we go on to Dark Souls, I realize we've actually been going on.
Oh, right. We still got to talk about Dark Souls.
Still got to talk about Dark Souls. I don't know how long we've gone on for at this point. Have we gone 2 hours? Have we gone?
I don't know. I was worried I wasn't going to be able to talk for long enough, and here I've gone yapping around.
The other thing I sort of want to pick on before we get on to Dark Souls is the sort of Irish games industry down south, because obviously I've done a bit of coverage on the north side of things with the episode we done on the other podcast that I do on Play Irish Press Play with Run for the Border, and that was sort of more northern sort of focused. And we'll do we'll try and make I'll say it's me really, but like we'll try and make a proper one on a follow up basically on that with the Southern contingent. But and I sort of talked about this as well with Alan Cunningham. But I want to sort of pick your brain a little bit on how you sort of see the Republic games industry sort of grown, and sort of tied into that, how can you see the South collaborating with the North a lot more anyway? Because I feel like there's definitely more opportunity for that to happen.
The game industry in the Republic of Ireland at the moment is a very exciting time at the moment. Like I've been here since 2013, so what's that now? 8 years.
8 years.
8 years. But and seeing the growth since 2013 to now is like it's been exciting. Like I think when I first moved, I think Digit was probably the only studio that I knew of, because PopCap had closed shortly before that, as you were saying earlier. And I think Digit, and you know, when I was there, like our first game, we were about like 20, 25 people. Like that was the largest studio by far. But now, you know, there's quite a few studios down here. You know, we have, there's Digit still. You know, we have Romero Games, we have Vela Games, we have Black Shamrock, we have there's Dreamfield, Gambrinus. You know, you have Spooky Doorway. There's like a handful of like, you know, everything from, you know, small indie teams to, you know, Triple I, you know, and now some kind of bigger studios as well. And then this year, down in the South, we've got the announcement of the tax credit, which has been really, really exciting to see. And I'm actually on the board of Immert, which is kind of our game industry community organization, and it was formed, I think, in 2015, if I remember correctly. But yeah, and that's something that the community down here and has been like really pushing for ever since I've been here, even before Immert. You know, it's been the thing of like everyone's like, we need some kind of support, and you know, tax breaks would be a great way to do that. Just, you know, and now the next thing that we're hoping to kind of push for is some sort of prototype fund, because that's kind of like the hardest, you know, kind of threshold is for companies to, you know, be able to, like, they have this great idea, there's like talented, you know, developers that want to do it, but they don't have the capital to kind of like start the company that they want to do. So some sort of way to kind of say like, okay, here, we're going to give you a bit of money to start, you know, build this prototype. Then if you can shop that around and, you know, get a publisher, that's great, because even though the tax credit is, you know, awesome and is really good, you know, tax breaks for kind of development here that can help, you know, match, you know, what tax credits are getting in France and Canada and the UK and various things like that. Now we can kind of match that and compete in that way. But that's only kind of for bigger, more established companies that already have a game out the road. But anyway, all that to say, there's a lot of cool stuff happening there that you know, Immert has been a big part of, you know, kind of talking with the government and organizing studio heads to kind of like come and dialogue with the government as well. So it's been really exciting to kind of be a part of that process. But yeah, the industry here is great. Like it's one thing that I've loved about being in Ireland, and you know, I've kind of made a lot of my friends I've made through because of the industry here. You know, kind of early. You know, it's one thing that you don't realize when you're in your like, you know, late 20s or 30s, is that when you move to a different country and have to make friends all over again, it's really tough. It's really, really hard. Yeah. You kind of forget how. I don't know if it was easier when you were younger, but I don't know. Maybe everyone was. So anyway, so when I moved here, you know, it was like one of the things that kind of was like, okay, I had my, you know, my workmates and stuff like that, and you kind of make, you know, a few friends at work. But what really got me involved in the industry here is things like there was a Dublin one game a month, and I would kind of, you know, one of my coworkers kind of invited me to that, and I was like, oh, this is cool, and it really got me excited into stuff outside of art. So I started like making my own games and, you know, learning a bit of programming and doing a little bit of, you know, Unity or Game Maker and all this stuff. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. And anyway, that community is still, you know, great. And, you know, obviously the pandemic's probably kind of like slowed a bit of that kind of like, you know, community kind of thing, going out to events. But oh my goodness, I can't wait to kind of go up and meet with people again. And just, you know, go to the pub and, you know, hang out.
And do something like Run for the Border again. That'd be fucking legendary.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and as far as collaboration with the North, like I think, yeah, I would love to do some more stuff like that. Like I know I've jumped into the Discord, the Northern Ireland Game Developers Network Discord, and just kind of seeing the community there is really exciting. And yeah, I would love to do, you know, I'd love to see us do stuff like, you know, more events, or maybe merging our award shows or something like that. I don't know what it could be. I'm just kind of throwing things out there. It's like stuff like that to just kind of build, you know, join our communities together, because there's a lot of great studios up in the North that you know, I was even unfamiliar of up until like 6 months ago, and be like, oh, there's some really, really cool stuff happening. And it's just that, you know, because, you know, of that like separation. Like we just haven't been as connected as we probably could be, and it'd be awesome to kind of see that interconnectedness happen a bit more. Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for that.
Well, just to put that out there, we'll just put this out here. Yeah. Like when I was speaking to a few years ago, Jordan Bradley of Ambertail Games, like maybe like the sort of idea that was mooted between me and her was like maybe an all Ireland sort of Discord community for both North and South.
Yeah. I love that. Like, yeah, I know Emirates put together our own Discord. As you do, that's the thing you do now. You need your Discord communities, but yeah, like some sort of way to just collaborate and jump in. I think that's great. I mean, I know you Northern Ireland Game Developers Network that is that lean coffee thing is really cool, or other various things where just like just jump in and just chat and share knowledge and share tips and because Ireland's fairly small and it's especially as far as like game industry is concerned, like it's a small thing. It's like we could really benefit from knowledge sharing and just kind of coming together and I think it's great. I love that sort of stuff.
Last question on this front, and then we'll jump into Dark Souls, I promise.
Yeah.
Where do you see the Irish games industry now within the next, let's say, year to maybe 3 years?
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I could see the industry here. I mean, definitely growing. I think especially in the South here, like with the tax incentive, like I see that being a big one. Like it's, I think it was, it was at 32% development costs, tax back, like that's going to be big. And with, and with Brexit and all, like maybe seeing like companies seeing the South, like being something, it's still in the EU. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, I think the tax incentive on itself is a big factor. Hopefully, I'm hoping it help build the indigenous companies here for sure. But it's definitely going to attract multinational companies as well, or people to kind of relocate here. So I see that as hopefully a good one, as long as we can solve our housing crisis. We'll be all right. But yeah, no, that's good, because the more talent that can kind of come here, the more we can kind of learn from that, and the more we can grow as a community, and if as companies open and close and new ones kind of are formed, people. Like I know myself and probably a lot of game developers are probably getting tired of moving countries every time they need a new job. and I think so the more we can kind of build the industry here and build the talent, and I think the better.
Let's talk of your favorite game, Dark Souls. Finally, we get to talk of Dark Souls, not just general in this episode, but also finally at last a Dark Souls episode. At last, we had Bloodborne.
At last,
we had a Bloodborne episode about 5 odd years ago with Alex Neonaki, formerly of Naughty Dog, now freelance. Cool. But we've not had Dark Souls. We've not had a Souls game basically.
Okay.
But no, we have. We do have.
We will.
Dark Souls. We will. I was going to ask if you'd played Demon Souls, but before we started, you said no, you not played Demon Souls.
Yeah, I'm a hack. I'm a hack. Um, no, I haven't played Demon Souls only because I didn't have I never had a PlayStation until the PS4. So and I only got that a couple of years ago. But the main reason I got that was so I could play Bloodborne, because I was like, no way, I need to play Bloodborne, and I was able to get a PS4, so I did that mainly for Bloodborne. But yeah, Dark Souls. Yeah, I think it's my favorite game, and as I was saying earlier, it's a really tough fight between my previous, before I played Dark Souls, it was probably Ocarina of Time, Zelda, but I think Dark Souls has now superseded it as my favorite game.
What has sort of attracted you to the Dark Souls in the first place? Was it just because Dark Souls was actually on an Xbox rather than just sort of being PlayStation exclusive?
I think what first got me interested in Dark Souls is so a good friend of mine in Pittsburgh really loved Demon Souls, and I would hang out at his place, and he would show me Demon Souls, and he was just in love with this game, and he's like, kind of showing it to me, and I played it a little bit, but half the time I was like just watching him play it. I was like, oh, this looks really cool, and so he was kind of raving about it, but because I didn't have a PlayStation at the time, I didn't play it. So when Dark Souls was coming out, he's like, hey, this is gonna be, or no, it came out on Xbox first before PC, right? PC was just the Prepare to Die edition, right?
Yes, it came on console, so it came on Xbox 360 and PS3 first in about 2011, and then it came to PC.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I didn't get it when it came out on the consoles, and my friend was raving about it still, and they're like, this is great. So when the Prepare to Die edition came out for PC, I think it was probably the following year. Oh man, and that I was looking at it a little bit earlier. That was 10 years ago Dark Souls came out. I feel so old. But anyway, and then the year later, Prepare to Die edition came out. So I was like, okay, I've got a semi-decent PC. I'm going to pick this up. And yeah, I fell in love with it as I, as soon as I first started playing it. And it wasn't even the fact that it was like fun and kind of the combat was kind of challenging, like it felt like this
Dark
kind of
Souls. What's the meaning of fun in Souls games?
Yeah. Funny story. I'll go off on a tangent. I'll try to come back. I'll come back to what actually brought me into enjoying the series. Because so anyway, my friend who was raving about the game, and he's like, this is an amazing game. I was like, okay, I jump in, and I jumped into Dark Souls, got through the tutorial, get into the main kind of like Firelink Shrine area, and I got stuck for 3 hours. It must have been 3 hours. I kept on going into, and for those who've played Dark Souls, I kept on going into the cemetery area and fighting all the skeletons over and over and over again, because I just thought like that was the way I felt like the level was telling me to go. I wasn't ready for this weird level design thing of it's like I probably wasn't paying attention to where the characters were telling me to go, or I don't even think they even specifically tell you to go up the hill or something, or maybe they did and I just missed it. I didn't realize. I thought it was going to be more obvious, and so I kept on going. I was like, well, this is the place I can go. I must be able to go here. But I kept on dying. I think I lost all my humanity that I had collected or something like that. I was like hollowed to like half. I was like so dead so many times, and I was like, okay. This is obviously I'm going in the wrong direction. I need to go somewhere else. So I went down and I found a way to go down. And then I started fighting these ghosts down in the kind of sunken area of the city. I was like, this is even harder. I can't even hit these things. And I was dying again. And I almost rage quit at that time, because I was like, I literally can't beat this game. People said it was hard. They were right. It's really hard. I can't beat it. Until I was just kind of like in a moment of desperation, just kind of like walking around the Firelink Shrine area, and I was like, I just don't know where to go. And then I kind of just like turned around and I saw this little path going up the hill, and I was just like, oh my god. I was going in the wrong direction. And anyway, so I started fighting those bad guys, just like normal undead, kind of characters, and they were so much easier. And I was just like, okay, trial by fire here. Like, all right. And then I started playing through it.
That feels like understatement of the year, trial by fire with Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Or any Souls game for that matter.
Yeah. And so I started getting into the game properly and was really enjoying it. But I also made the mistake because I think the first class I had picked was Thief or Bandit. I think it was called Bandit, which is a lot more of the parrying and like the timing to then get like a lot of damage, but you're a lot weaker. So I actually realized after I'd like spent like 3 or 4 hours at this point, I'd like gone through this, like, okay, you know what? I think I picked a hard character. I'm gonna go back, and I restarted as a pyromancer, and I played my first playthrough as a pyromancer, and that was a lot of fun. But yeah, and what's interesting is like, even though Dark Souls was, it was hard, and and it is like this game about timing, and that is definitely a fun aspect of the combat mechanic of the game, is like this kind of timing, and it feels kind of like this dance, almost like this combat dance, and you're kind of like managing your stamina, and you're trying to time with the parry, and you're kind of like you're kind of dancing with your partner. That aside is, we have all this, this kind of discourse around, the get good kind of aspect of Dark Souls. And like, obviously my opinion is like, yeah, you should allow people to play a game how they want, every games have always had like some sort of difficulty setting, and it should be up to a player to kind of do a game how they want to play. This idea that it has to, the only right way to play it is this super, super difficult way is a bit silly, but whatever. So I was playing Dark Souls. I was enjoying the combat. I almost quit, but then I jumped back into it, and I was really enjoying it. But what really captured me about Dark Souls was the world building and the kind of the lore and the narrative design, in a sense. Like so it's presented to you in this way that isn't like it's not. You have a little bit of cinematics at the beginning. You have a little bit of like dialogue with certain characters as they kind of tell you, oh, you need to, ring this bell. So you get like these kind of like directions of where to go. But you kind of also get these little snippets of these stories, of their backstories, but they're presented to you as if you are already in this world and you already understand what's happened, kind of in a way. And it feels, and I mean, the voice acting is really good, so that that's good. But the dialogues they feel natural because they're not. It's not like someone just telling you a story, and so you have a little bit of that, but then you get a lot of this kind of lore through the environment. Whether it's like the areas you're going to, or statues, or you might pick up like a ring or something off of like a dead body, and then you like read the item description, and it gives you a little taste of that. And so when I was first playing the game, I didn't understand the lore, I didn't follow the narrative thread at all. I was just kind of really enjoying being in this world that felt so much larger than my character, because it was like I wasn't expected to kind of like, my objective wasn't to follow the story, but I was like in this world where I'm like, my character was, all I really knew was I'm, quote, chosen undead, and I'm to fight, and I just fight these bosses, essentially. But I'm surrounded by all this lore and history and the lords and the, and the demons and the various things, and I'm, kind of going through it. And it was only after that, I kind of, I almost didn't really care at the time what the actual story was. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this kind of like being surrounded in it, but I didn't really I didn't have this expectation that I needed to know the story, because honestly I didn't really think that it was being presented to me that way. Obviously there, like now there's there's this YouTuber Vadi Vidya, VAATIVIDYA, that's like done this like deep dive into the Dark Souls lore, which I haven't even gone through all of it, but it's really, really fascinating. They've gone through with maybe, I think, a couple people, they've gone through and kind of dissected all the conversations and the environment design and other various things, and kind of tell the story of Dark Souls lore in kind of a linear way, and go into the different NPC characters you meet and kind of tell their kind of story. Because it's very, very easy to miss all these like narrative threads in the game. Like if you kill a boss before you talk to another character, then you just don't see them again, and you don't finish that, narrative thread. So it's really easy to miss. And I probably only loosely understood some of the narrative thread as I was playing the game, but it was so compelling of a world in that way.
We'll touch upon all these sort of aspects separately in a bit. First, I want to sort of touch on something that you mentioned there, and that's sort of the get good mentality of the Souls games that have sort of been born out from them in more detail from what you were saying there now. And I do sort of get the mentality of that the vision of the developer should be sort of embraced and met, but at the same time that's not exactly possible with certain players who have disabilities and stuff like that there, who want to sort of experience some of the things that you just mentioned, like the lore, like exploration of the world, and all sorts of things tied to these games, like with Dark Souls, like with Bloodborne. And so what I want to get to is just sort of how do I word this, basically? How detrimental basically can that sort of get good mentality be, basically? Because it's one thing to sort of poke fun at yourself for get good and all that there, but it does feel like at the same time it is very much toxic in a way.
Yeah. It's a tough one. I mean, like on one side, you have the, obviously making games is tough, and balancing a game is hard, and the more time you pour into different versions of a game to like balance it on different difficulty levels, that it's more time you have to invest as a developer into making that work. That being said, I mean, I think it's a worthy thing to invest in. I mean, if there's developers out there that don't care, then okay, yeah. But they'll probably get contingent of people who are like, I really wanted to play this game and I can't. And that kind of sucks. But it's the same thing. It's like same thing with like adding in, and that could be even just a personal preference for the players. Like, I just don't want a difficult game. I just want something like I just want to enjoy it the way I want to enjoy it. More I don't really care about the mechanical challenge, and I really just kind of want to enjoy the experience of the game. Or it could be something more, important, which is like, adding in accessibility options and various things like that. And I think, I think it's great to kind of see the industry moving moving into like doing that more, like making sure there's good accessibility options and praising the games and developers that pour in the time and effort into that. And I think that should be something that game developers think about more. And it's like, I don't really see and there definitely is a toxic aspect of it that you see online, which is like, well, this is the game. Like there's this weird element of like, needing to be the best at a game at its like, most difficult or something
it's one thing to get that from a multiplayer aspect.
Yeah.
It's another from a sort of when you're playing it as a single player game, basically. Like
exactly. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, if it's like a competitive multiplayer thing, it's like, okay, you don't want anything in there to like change it. So it's, or I mean, there's also a lot of multiplayer games I think I remember playing that you can automatically put in handicaps on players that are really, really good at a game, just so you can kind of balance it out the way you want to. But that's obviously a personal preference for the players involved. You'd usually you wouldn't do that in I remember doing that in LAN parties, because you'd have someone who had the game who's really, really good, and you're like, put on the handicap. We don't play this enough, and you're way too good. But yeah, you don't really see that on like competitive multiplayer, I guess, so much. But yeah, so I think that's I guess I think that's a bit weird when you see like someone who's like, well, no, I enjoyed the game this way because that's the intent of the game, and I got really good at it, and so you can't enjoy it unless you also get good at it that way. Like, yeah, that side of it is a bit weird, and yeah.
The other side of it though is the immense satisfaction you get when you do like beat a boss in that game, because like yes, it's difficult, yes, it's challenging to the point of literally throwing your controller not only for so much against the wall or up against the wall, but basically smashing through the wall at this point.
yeah.
But there is such a feeling of rewardingness. Oh, I don't even know if that's a word, but like that feeling of reward and a job well done on beating that boss in these sorts of games.
Yeah, I know I enjoy that. Like, I personally enjoy that aspect of it. But depending on the game, it's like I have had moments of, definitely when I was younger, I had a lot more time to kind of be a bit more obsessive. Like, I need to beat this, I need to beat this. But I think as I've gotten older, I have less time to kind of just spend hours on it. It's like I have so many games I want to play, and if I'm kind of like running into a wall too much, I'll be like, all right. But for me, if there is a difficulty level, I'll just like bump it down to the next difficulty level and be like, that's fine. Like I can do that. But it's a tough one. But at the same time, it's like, I don't need to play every game. Like if a game is either too hard or like I'm getting a little frustrated with it, I can't beat anything yet. It's like I've gotten to the point where I'll just put it down and play the next game I want to play. But yeah, I mean, that is one of the reasons why I've enjoyed Dark Souls is like, you're just, it was first game in a while where I felt like I had to do that. Like, I need to actually learn this boss's moves. I need to, train essentially in this boss. And it was frustrating at times, but I really enjoyed it. And I think as far as like, Souls-ish games, like I think the one that hit me the hardest was Sekiro. Oh man, the main guy when you're at the top of the tower, I don't even know how many days I think I actually quit that game for a good 6 months and then came back to it after 6 months because I was like, I really want to play this game again, but I just hit a wall, and I realized I hadn't been parrying right. Or is it parrying in the game? I forget what they call it, but it's like, I hadn't actually been doing the mechanics correctly, and that forced me to learn. And I was like, okay, I got it. But yeah, so I really enjoyed that.
There was this fantastic book that was released a few years ago. You Died at the Dark Souls book by Jason Killingsworth and Kevin MacDonald. And there's a quote actually from that I sort of want to touch on. And that was sort of written in the book. And that's the mechanic of, the unofficial mechanic, I guess, of death as an education. As in dying over and over and over and over again in order to sort of find out what you can do better for the next fight against, say, going through a certain area or going up against a certain boss. In that instance, how did you sort of go in, or how did you go through the game with that sort of mentality in mind then?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's definitely, obviously it's no argument that that's a part of the game mechanic. Excuse me. But yeah, I mean, I definitely learned a lot. Like I was saying, like when my first playthrough in it, when I died for 3 hours straight and I lost all my humanity, I definitely started that game. It was probably actually one of the reasons why I started over again as well. It's like I'd lost all my humanity, or essentially this way of kind of like crawling back and getting a little bit more health, if I remember correctly. But I'd lost all my humanity to kind of like get human again, unhallowed or what have you. But yeah, and what's funny is I later on in the game you can get this ring that allows you to, when you die, it breaks, and you don't lose your souls, and but this ring breaks, and you kind of like the penalty for death isn't there anymore. But then you can go get it repaired, so that that can happen again. And I got into this loop because I was so desperately not wanting to die and lose my souls. I would go back to the blacksmith, which was a bit of like a hike, I'd go back to the blacksmith every time I died to fix this ring, so I'd go back and not lose my souls again. Because like later on in the game, you get a lot of souls, and to level up you need even more and more and stuff like that. And there was actually a certain part of me as I was getting close to beating the game where I just like, I actually hate how much I'm bound to this ring because I don't want to die. I don't want to lose my progress. Like it, I almost wish I didn't have it, but I did have it, and so I would use it. I don't know. Maybe there's something in there where this fact is like I felt so bound to like not wanting to die in this ring. But anyway, but yeah, no, I thought that was great. I mean, it is definitely, it's frustrating on one sense, but it's also interesting on another, and it also puts this real sense of threat. Like, not many games provide you with a sense of like dread, and the death mechanic and like being able to be invaded, like being invaded when you have a lot of souls and you're in the middle of somewhere in Dark Souls, you get invaded, is like one of the most terrifying moments in games because you're like, because you're just like, I know for me it's like
feeling of, oh my god, I am unbelievably fucked.
Yeah, exactly. And I was never good at, and I still am not good at the multiplayer, like trying to fight off someone else in Dark Souls who invades me, and try to, like, I rarely win those, like maybe a 10% win chance on, on my side. So anytime it's like you've been invaded and I don't have a friend with me and I'm on my own, I'm just like, my heart sinks and I'm like, fuck sake. Like, you fucker. Like, I'm just so mad. And, can I cuss that? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, but, I mean, I'm
yeah, okay. But, oh man, like, yeah. And there's not many games that makes me feel that way. But it's great. It's great. It's like one of those things. And probably the original Dark Souls, or maybe it was 2 or 3. There was, a moment where I was like, okay, I want to be, the jerk now. And I go and invade people and just try to, be a jerk. But I was never that good at it, but it was just kind of fun that it was like, there's this mechanic built in to like grief people.
I mean, like,
it's a bit mean.
It's the same sort of feeling in Deathloop as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I still need to get further in Deathloop. Just started playing it, but yeah. But yeah, it's not. Yeah, you don't get that feeling in a lot of games, and so and you, yeah, it's great. It's great. I love it.
You sort of touched upon it there a while ago, but I can't recall a game that has had such a fan base extensively explore in detail a series lore in the way, people have for games like Dark Souls or other Souls games like Bloodborne, like Sekiro, and likely in a few months' time, as of recording this, Elden Ring. Like, and you mentioned as well as the sort of world building in that as well, because like that. Again, I don't think you will see such a dedicated fan base to sort of go over every inch in detail of the lore of a series like Dark Souls. I mean, like, and you said yourself, like, you were sort of before we started, like, you were sort of refreshing yourself a wee bit on the lore aspect, anyway. But talk to me a little bit about that in terms of your perspective on playing the game, anyway.
Yeah, so like I was saying, like I haven't done a deep dive into the lore so much myself, even though I've been so kind of fascinated by it. And like a friend of mine kind of sent me on that YouTuber that was kind of doing it, and I've been kind of slowly picking away at those videos. I think what draws people to it is that I don't know if there's a term for this, but there's like this in kind of modern culture, there's this kind of like prevalence to everything in a movie or a TV show or a game or whatever kind of cultural medium you have. Every little thing needs to be explained. I think a good example of this is Lost, the TV series.
Yes.
Lost. Yeah, and it's like I loved that show for the first 2 seasons because everything was a mystery and everything wasn't explained, and it was just it was like this weird shit was happening. You didn't know what it was, and they were trying to figure it out, and you're kind of getting these clues, but it was all wrapped around like trying to discover the mystery. As soon as you get into the seasons that start explaining the thing, then you're just like, oh well, that's not as exciting as I thought it was gonna be.
I feel like for me that was season 4. Because season 3 was just was great, but it wasn't as good as the first.
Yeah, it might have been season 4. Yeah,
actually, the first bit of season 3 was bad. But after those first 2 episodes, admittedly this was after the writer's strike for time. Season 3 just actually improved a lot by that point, and oh my god, the ending that was the point where you went, what the fuck just happened with the whole? We gotta go back, Kate. We gotta go back.
yeah. So I think that's a perfect example of how when a medium feels like it has to explain everything to the viewer or the player, when they do that, you actually kind of ruin the fun. You ruin the experience. And I think what Dark Souls does really well, or the Souls series and Bloodborne and Sekiro, is kind of what I was talking about earlier, which is they've done a lot of work behind the scenes, or before they present the game to the player. They've done a lot of world building work. They have everything. They have their kind of like creation theory. They have their everything. They have their the lords. You have the witches of Izalith. You have the Gwyn, and you have the all the all the various characters and stuff. And they have all this stuff wrapped around, and the undead thing, and the pyromancers and the clerics and stuff. They have all this stuff worked out, but they never present it to you in a linear or never present it to you as a player in this kind of way, like you would have in like I don't know, like or like another brilliant, like a brilliant narrative game. The Last of Us, or a game like that, which is like also has a really brilliant story, but nothing is really left to your imagination because you're kind of presented it almost in like a film, cinematic kind of narrative, which is great. But Dark Souls doesn't do that. They use the game and the interactive nature of the game to present a story to you. And like I was saying earlier, it's like a little bit of conversation, but a lot of it is in the environment, and a lot of it, is in little item descriptions. And so what you have is like you've now created an interactive narrative experience, which is the player can try to piece that together. And I think that's why you have this kind of fan base so kind of obsessed with it, because it is deep. It's not a shallow narrative story. It's not just enough to make you feel, like to just do the thing you need to do. It's a lot deeper than that. It's a lot bigger than that, but they don't show you right away, or they don't show you really directly, and they allow you to kind of discover it yourself. So you have all these YouTube videos of people kind of like trying to piece it together and discover it and talk about it, which I think is what's so kind of fascinating about it.
The other thing that sort of touches on the sort of aspect of that sort of world building is some of the environments and world within Dark Souls, and especially, and you sort of alluded to it with the graveyard stuff, but like the exploration as well is the atmosphere. It feels second to none in other games anyway, or to a majority of games anyway, at least. Like there's like in terms of I'll speak. I won't speak too much generally on this aspect in regards to Dark Souls. I'll actually mention it in regards to another Souls-like game, which is Bloodborne, and we'll touch upon Bloodborne properly in detail in a bit. But like Bloodborne, going through that world at the start, like there feels like, even just in that small bit, there feels like there's a lot more sort of atmosphere in that small bit at the start of the game, or the sort of, you're going about sort of town aspect of it early on in the game. It feels like there's more atmosphere in that little bit of the game than there is the majority of games that are out there right now. And I think the way it deals with that is absolutely brilliant. Admittedly, I have not played Bloodborne in quite a few years. I think the last time I played it was with that aforementioned episode on Bloodborne a few years ago for Season 4 with Alex Leonaki. So I really need to play it again, just to sort of refresh myself a little bit. But I think even in that small aspect of Bloodborne, like I said, there's enough atmosphere in that than the majority of games these days. And to touch on the other aspect I mentioned, it feels like the exploration as well in these games. You get really rewarded with the exploration of within these worlds whenever you're going about, whether it is Bloodborne, whether it is Dark Souls. I feel like for me, From Software and Miyazaki just sort of nails that concept of rewarding the player who explores. It may not end up, you may not be rewarded greatly. You might end up being dead for your efforts, but it feels like at least in that regard, at least in terms of my own interpretation of it, it feels like you do get something out of it, for better or worse anyway. But nonetheless, it is something that is worthwhile and in terms of exploring anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I think the exploration side of stuff is really great. I mean, there's so many parts of Dark Souls and Bloodborne that are optional. Like, you don't have to go, like Dark Souls, for instance, like the painted world. Like, I don't think even my first playthrough I went in there into that painting. But I think like you're talking about the rewards. I think what's so fascinating about it is, like, sure, you get like you will often get some sort of gameplay mechanic related reward, whether it's like a really cool item or a cool weapon, but you also get this narrative reward of, like, it's often a part of the grander story that you might not even know 100% what the threads are, but you're going into this thing and you're like, and it's often in its own like really creative, unique place. Painted World being a good example of it. And Bloodborne's the same. So you are encouraged to kind of go and maybe talk to NPCs or kind of try to explore this other corridor or fight this boss that you don't have to, but you're like, but it's something, and sometimes, like, maybe it's too strong, you come back to it later, or maybe you forget about it. But I think it is fascinating, is because sometimes, like we're talking, it's like game development is hard, and when you're on a deadline or you only got a certain amount of budget, it's really hard to invest, say that it's worth investing the time into creating content that maybe a player doesn't have to do. like that's it's quite bold as a developer to say, like, we're going to create a certain portion of this game that is, all these monsters and animations and characters and environment design and all this other stuff that we're pouring in, and the money we're pouring into, like, build this, but it's because it creates a better experience for the game. And I think that's fascinating, because if you didn't do that, and the game would feel so linear. Even though the games probably are relatively linear. Yeah, I mean, they're not open world games in the same sense, though. Elden Ring looks like it might be a little bit more open worldy. But yeah, I mean, I think that allowing that sense of exploration is exciting. It kind of is what kind of, I think, captures people, and again, I think it adds to that sense of this world is bigger than me. It feels like a big world, not only in the narrative design, but also in the there's elements of this game that I can play that I don't have to, and oftentimes the first time I played through some of the games, I haven't gone into these extra parts, or like I think I've only beaten Bloodborne once, and I only did one ending, but I know that there's like 3 different endings or something like that, and that's just really cool. So it like encourages to kind of like play through it again, and all this stuff.
I don't know if actually you mentioned this earlier, but like the one thing that we sort of touched on before we started was the sort of narrative design of these games, and Dark Souls in particular. Like, go into that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a narrative designer, of course, or a writer, but I think one thing that's kind of captured me is like, as I've been in games industry for almost 9 years now, and obviously playing games since I was a kid, like it is, and more recently been interested in like narrative design and like how you present story to a player, like what is the feeling or what is the mood that you're trying to kind of convey to a player, or because that's really important. And I think sometimes we haven't given narrative enough importance in games. So when you are presented with a game that does something interesting in that space, it's like it feels even more impactful. And I think Dark Souls, it is interesting because when you think about narrative or writing, you often think of your Last of Us and your games like that, because it is presented like a movie or other formats that we're used to kind of receiving story from. And I think when I realized, because like I was saying, the first time I played Dark Souls, I didn't realize there was specifically a narrative thread or story. And it wasn't until after I'd kind of beat it and was chatting to my friend where he was starting to talk about all the story kind of behind it, because he was kind of listening to a couple podcasts that were kind of diving into it. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize that they had put in that much effort to kind of make this, these threads. I just kind of went to, the graveyard area with the bone monsters that, so I was just fighting those. And then I went to the swamp area with the leeches. I just thought it was like a level in some way, but it had like this broader thing. But yeah, but then when he kind of mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, that does make sense, because it's almost like this subconscious thing to me as I was interacting with this world. It just made it feel like a cohesive world, without me realizing it, because of the way that they presented the story to the player. And it, like I was saying before, like it wasn't just dialogue or audio. It was the world and the that I was walking, and maybe even the level design itself, like the fact that I was going into these places after, like I'm going into the swamp and then into Izalith and various things. Like it's like you can kind of see the process of the kind of the story kind of laid out before you.
The other, actually, I just realized something that, just to sort of touch back on the gameplay side of things, is we've actually not discussed the boss fights in Dark Souls at all. Yet. So let's rectify that. How did you find them?
I'm trying to remember. I mean they're fun and they're tough. Obviously it's about learning their fighting patterns. Again, kind of like I was mentioning, like it's almost like this dance, and I think that's what I've really, really enjoyed with Dark Souls, is like it kind of it gives you enough kind of tools, controls, and that you're kind of like, okay, I need to learn how to, and you kind of build your character in the way that you want to dance, in a way. So you can kind of be the big heavy blocker character, or you're the fast nimble character, or you're the range character kind of stuff. And you're kind of trying to figure out how do I fight this boss in this manner? And you're trying to learn their moves and their tells. So they'll kind of do the slight tell before they do the thing. Oftentimes it's very quick and you can't see it. You got to get really perceptive at what that is. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've definitely found that a lot of fun, and definitely run into a boss that just like feels really, really tough, and you try to have crack at it for 20, 50 times, and you're like, I can't fucking do this. All right, I need to go back and do a little bit of grinding to kind of level up my character, to just get a bit more health, or maybe I need to go to another, maybe I missed another level that I need to do before this one, but yeah, yeah, it's great fun.
The thing that Dark Souls players always come back to when it comes to the boss fights is always Ornstein's smile.
Oh yeah, that one. Oh my god. Yeah, that was. I think that was the first time. Whereas I spent, I don't know, a good hour waiting for a random multiplayer person to help me, because I was like, I can't fucking do this, and so I was just like sitting. I remember sitting outside the boss, the gray wall of the boss fight, and be like, I'm gonna sit here until someone can help me, Eventually somebody did, and I got through it. But I kept on thinking, like, I don't know how I could do this fight without somebody else helping me, because it's like the 2-on-1 aspect of it was just too much. And maybe I wasn't leveled up enough to kind of take it on. But yeah, man, it was tough. But another aspect of it, I was like, I wonder if they intentionally did that to like make you like you needed to be in that sense of desperation to ask for help, kind of thing. You can't just do it on your own all the time. Maybe they're teaching us something.
So obviously, in your role at Romero, with being sort of an art lead and all that, there, obviously I have to talk about the art direction and just sort of the general vibes of the art presentation in these games, but especially obviously in regards to what we're talking about with Dark Souls.
Yeah,
it's who. That's all I have, because that's the only reason I can sort of put to it. Because it's like, ooh, this is I don't quite know how else to put it. That's just it reminds me back to the day-to-day scene where Chris Morris just basically asked Steve Coogan in sum up the Queen's fight with John Major in one word. He can't, and he just sums it up with a sound like, Argh.
A push for time. Can you sum it up in a word?
No.
A sound?
That's basically me with the art of Dark Souls.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the visual kind of direction of the Dark Souls series is great. It's like this awesome blend of kind of high fantasy, but feels really dark and moody. It's gritty and feels
very gothic.
Depressing.
Very gothic.
Yeah. It feels very depressing. Like it's got this weight, which obviously fits the story as well.
Yeah.
Very inventive characters. I would love to. I don't have any Art Souls Dark Souls art books yet, but I do want to get some. It's like that would be. I would love to be in the be a fly on the wall in the like world building a new Dark Souls game kind of thing. Like seeing how the creative director or art director or the concept artists or the narrative designers kind of all come together and kind of communicate how they want to kind of present this stuff. Like that would be fascinating to see. And like you were saying earlier, like I think Dark Souls is great. Obviously I love the art direction, but Bloodborne also kind of captures, like I think it captured everyone even more. Like it's feeling like this uniqueness of art direction. And I wonder if it was more of the theme. Like I mean, because you have this great blend of this kind of like Victorian meets eldritch horror, werewolf and gothic kind of stuff, and that's all very fascinating. Like so maybe compared to Dark Souls, which is Dark Souls feels a little bit more kind of classic medieval high fantasy, even though they obviously have these demons and various things. Like it's also very fascinating. But I think maybe that's why Bloodborne captured. And obviously you have like this in most of the game. You have this big huge moon.
Oh yeah,
just kind of like really kind of striking. And
I think the thing about in regards to Dark Souls and Bloodborne in terms of art anyway, that's the stuff that I think. For me, Bloodborne sort of art direction attracted me to it a lot more than Dark Souls. This isn't to say Dark Souls art direction is worse than Bloodborne. Far from it. Like Dark Souls art direction is fantastic. But I think the thing that sort of attracted me more to Bloodborne, as a player who is otherwise very shit at Souls games and cannot play them for shit, is the fact that Bloodborne's art direction feels a lot more richer to me anyway than Dark Souls. And again, this isn't a slight on Dark Souls. Don't get me wrong on that. That isn't a slight on Dark Souls. But for me, it feels like Bloodborne again has that bit more richer of an art direction to it than Dark Souls anyway. And I feel like also that sort of adds to the atmosphere of it as well.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I definitely agree. Like I wonder, like I haven't done a comparative. Obviously, the art direction at a high level is kind of pretty similar as far as like aesthetics go. Yeah. But the theme is a little bit different. I wonder if I haven't done a deep dive, but comparing the two. But I wonder if Bloodborne has a bit more color, even just in general. I'm not sure. Like it is also a very kind of dark, kind of desaturated game too. But I'm thinking like there are a few kind of key images in my head where like I remember seeing like the big blood red moon with the like the Gothic architecture and your classic character and stuff. I'm just like, okay, is it that or there was a few elements with the the eldritch horror kind of characters when you're coming in, like what was the library, when you kind of jump off that into there's a few moments where you're like dealing with the eldritch horrors that also feel very, very iconic. I mean, anyway, all gorgeous games. I think they do a real good set. And I mean, as far as like coming back to Dark Souls, there's like a few key moments that game too, like when you come up into Arno Londor, like that moment of like coming from like what you've mainly been in this kind of dark, dreary environment, and you kind of get brought up by those kind of like bat-winged demons up over the walls of Arno Londor, and this is like this glorious golden city. I remember that being like a very iconic kind of moment as well. So I think they do a good job really kind of not only like setting scenes and making like these environments feel very iconic and different from each other, but obviously like the character, the creature designs and the monsters you're kind of fighting all have very there's just really interesting designs. I always think of it like back on like if I'm thinking of like creepy kind of characters, like I'm always thinking like, okay, I should let me reference a little bit of Dark Souls or Bloodborne. There's so many great designs. I just love it. It's just really, really good.
So moving on then, have you had a chance to play Dark Souls Remastered at all then?
Oh yeah, so I'm playing Dark Souls Remastered right now with a friend.
You did say that. You did say that.
Yeah. We might have mentioned that earlier in the episode or before we started.
Well, we mentioned it before we started talking, but I had actually completely forgot about that.
I don't know if I mentioned it was remastered, but I've been playing through Remastered with a friend of mine, and that's been a lot of fun. It's really, really cool. It's actually what when you reached out to me and asked me my favorite game, I was like, I probably was going to say Dark Souls anyway, but I was like, I'm still playing this game 10 years later. It's probably a good candidate.
I can't escape it. I can't escape it. What do you think of Remastered anyway in comparison to the original game put out 10 years ago anyway?
I haven't played the original like Prepare to Die edition in a long time, because I probably hadn't played Dark Souls or picked it up for a few years. So when the Remastered came out, I was like, okay, I'll pick it up. I mean, it's a funny thing because it's like as you haven't played a game for a while, you have your memory of what you remember a game feeling like. But then sometimes when you go back and you're like, oh man, these graphics suck. I think the remaster, like when I jumped into the remaster, I'm like, yeah, this feels like what I remembered. I didn't really realize that it had because obviously it doesn't look like a PS5 game. It's not that remastered. But I was like, oh yeah, this looks great. And then I looked at like some screenshots of the original Dark Souls. I was like, oh wow, it did look a lot worse. This does look a lot better. Oh okay. So, it felt the same. Like it captured, my expectation of what I remembered the game feeling like. So if someone wouldn't have told me, I probably wouldn't have thought about it that much until I saw images of the original.
So it's sort of skirted around these games. For in talking about Dark Souls, but like let's talk Bloodborne. Let's talk of Sekiro. Let's talk of Elden Ring then. Specifically, I want to sort of like we sort of alluded to it in terms of the art direction anyway, but like Bloodborne in particular feels like more of a revolution than an evolution of the Dark Souls formula that sort of formulated. Whereas Sekiro and Elden Ring. This isn't slight both Sekiro and Elden Ring. Like Elden Ring looks fantastic, and Sekiro, like the very little I've played of that is fantastic. But like in their own ways, they feel like evolutions of Dark Souls, and and in that regard, Bloodborne. Whereas Bloodborne feels like an absolute game changer in terms of the Souls formula from what Miyazaki and From Software have done with Dark Souls. And so what is it that those games have sort of brought from Dark Souls, and I guess considering Dark Souls brought it from that as well, Demon Souls, what is it about these sorts of games that I don't quite know how to sort of ask this question, but like how do these games sort of evolve the formula then, or at least in Bloodborne's case, sort of significantly revolutionize it? Anyway, at least in my eyes, anyways, because I feel like it does feel like in Bloodborne's case, it feels like a significant revolution on that front, anyway, compared to Sekiro or Elden Ring, anyway.
Yeah, I think what I found interesting, and I think is definitely a props to the design decisions that the designers that like made that decision to kind of like change it up, like because you often see a lot of games and like they almost which I understand, and like sometimes we want it is like to keep the formula the same and just give us more content of the same formula. And I think the Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 probably did that to an extent. They did kind of change a few things up to a little bit along the way. But like you're saying, like Bloodborne was interesting because what they did was, at least the way I played Dark Souls, and maybe a lot of people did, is I almost always had a shield. So I was usually like walking into areas I didn't know with my shield up, being like, I'm gonna get fucked here. So I'm just like looking around every corner, like waiting for that sword to swing. But in Bloodborne, they essentially forced you not to do that. They're like no, you don't have shield. There is no shield. There actually is one shield. There's one shield, and they allow you to pick it up, but it's absolute shit. And they essentially, I think they kind of mock you with it, because I think the item description. You can't
play this game. You think you can pick up this shield and that protects you? You can't play this game for shit.
And so what I thought was fun about that game is they turned that idea on its head, and it's like, no, it's not about blocking damage. It's about getting in and essentially getting into the melee fray of it all, and say like, okay, no, you can get hurt, but you just got to deal damage back and you can get a bit of that health back. So it kind of forced you into the action, which I think was a really interesting way to kind of like, kind of twist the formula a little bit.
I feel like as well, like using that gun is in effect the shield anyway as well.
Yeah, definitely, because you can kind of like knock them or stagger them and kind of prevent them from kind of doing the attack. Yeah, it's interesting. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, and I definitely think it did kind of change the kind of series, a little bit, kind of like mess with it enough. I don't know, like maybe I'm wrong. I almost felt like Sekiro actually was more of a departure than the other Souls games. I felt like it was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. But I almost felt it felt less Souls-like than Bloodborne did. maybe it was because of like the grappling hook, or maybe it was like because and the way that Bloodborne said, okay, you can't block, you have to get in the melee. Sekiro essentially changed that again and said, okay, you're not blocking, and you're in the melee, but now it's about parrying. Like the focus is now parrying and being able to like time your attack, so you're kind of like blocking, and it's about the balance of your, was it stamina? I forget. I haven't played Sekiro in a little bit, but it's like the stamina meter, or maybe it's like, because I know the enemies get that bar that kind of racks up as well. So it's about like, okay, if you time the parrying attacks, you build up their exhaustion meter essentially, and then and that's kind of how you do the balance. And I found that and that was, like I was saying, I think before, when I was playing Sekiro, like I kind of hit this wall, and it's because I wasn't paying attention to that. And once I figured that out, and I was just like, oh, okay, this is how this game wants me to play, because I'd never really properly played a Souls game like that. And it forced me to kind of change my play behavior. I was like, oh, okay. And then I was able to kind of get into it further. And then Elden Ring, I mean, I've watched a few videos, but yeah, I'll be interested to see how they change up the, or if they'll do much, or if they're kind of going to go, kind of stick to a Dark Souls kind of vibe, because it feels like, more Dark Souls, but now I can jump on a horse and it's more open. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm really, really excited about Elden Ring. But yeah, I love that they're not afraid, From Software is not afraid to experiment with the formula that they've created.
I feel like for me as well, what really works with From and what they do is that they aren't afraid to experiment, and basically you have the sort of mentality of why fix what isn't broken and all that there. Like, that's fair enough. But they aren't afraid to experiment very far outside the box either with their games as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. Like I like to see a studio experiment like that. I think it's why a lot of fans of the series come back and try the games. I mean, obviously the games are fun, but I think they've proven that they're not just following a formula, and they're willing to experiment, and they're wanting to engage the player into trying new things a little bit, which is cool.
Out of curiosity, what other developers do you think have sort of done that sort of experimentation that I sort of alluded to with regards to From, that have also done it very well as well?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean, like, in regards to just sort of thinking of answers in my own right, I feel like one studio that has really sort of gotten that is not necessarily a developer that does similar Souls-like games compared to From Software. Like, their games are very, very far different to what From has put out in the past. Although, in fairness, they have put out a game that's sort of Souls-ish in nature, not necessarily in terms of very, very, very Souls-like and what From does, but the examples I'm thinking of. So the example I'm thinking of actually is Respawn, and the games I'm thinking of specifically. They've done a From-ish Souls game in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, although it's not as hard as obviously the Souls games. The examples I'm actually thinking of is Titanfall, especially Titanfall 2. And I was actually listening to a contribution for the Goody special we did a few years ago for my favorite game, and one of the references was one of the games in that episode was Titanfall 2, and how Titanfall just seems to basically use mechanics in one level and then dispose them, and you never see them again for the rest of the game. And that sort of has Nintendo sort of mentality to it. And like the exact example I'm thinking of in that regard with Titanfall is effecting calls in Titanfall 2.
Yeah, cool. I've played a little bit of Titanfall 2. I don't think I played the first Titanfall. So yeah, that I mean that sounds cool. I wouldn't know as well, just because I haven't played those games
You
as
need
much.
to play more Titanfall 2. It's so fucking good.
Yeah,
It really is.
yeah. I think did they I think I picked it up. Did they have like a free on Epic for a little bit or something? I picked it up in something and I was playing it on there, which was a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm trying to think of games. Man, it's like an old it's an old series at this point now, but just recently revitalized. Age of Empires series, I think, is a thing that I had like a similar kind of like love for, which was the original Age of Empires, and then when they changed stuff, but changed it enough for Age of Empires 2. That game was amazing. And then they changed it up a little bit more with Age of Mythology, and I loved that. I didn't get into Age of Empires 3, but I also heard that's kind of about where it kind of like wasn't getting as good. But then recently they came out with Age of Empires 4, and it's essentially like going back to the roots of Age of Empires 2, but just changing enough to kind of mix it up. And I've really, really been enjoying that one. Yeah, that's probably the. I mean, I'm sure there's more. I just haven't haven't thought about it enough of like studios where they put out consistent like series of games that were kind of based off thing, but they weren't afraid to essentially change something up, to kind of experiment on the genre, I guess.
No, fair enough. So, what else do you like about Dark Souls that we've not touched upon tonight?
Dark Souls and the Bloodborne, or probably more Bloodborne, but the Dark Souls series, it's interesting because it's like, as we were saying earlier, it's like it's these games that we kind of are almost more well known for like being this. It's just like these really hard games that are, you have to get good at, or you just you have to get good at to beat them. But Bloodborne especially, like my wife sat on the couch and just watched me play through that game. Like she loved that game just watching it. And I think that's kind of comes back to like a testament of like how interesting the world was, whether it's the art direction or the narrative design or just like the whole creative vision of that game is presented in such an interesting way that it's like it's just one of those games. It's like you don't even have to play it to be like enraptured by it. I need to play that game again. Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything else. Yeah, it's just a great game. If you haven't played a Dark Souls game, anyone who's listening, you should play them. They're really good.
You probably should play them, if nothing else, for rite of passage at least.
Yeah. Tell yourself you tried. Yeah. As long as you don't spend 3 hours trying to fight skeletons in a graveyard that are like 20 levels too hard for you, I think you'll be fine. Yeah. Oh, and another thing that's fun to do with Dark Souls, and I love doing this, is like if you've had a friend that hasn't played Dark Souls and you have, it's a lot of fun to kind of play through Dark Souls with somebody. Now, syncing up and getting multiplayer to work is a bit of like a weird. It's not as straightforward as most games. For those who haven't played, you have to like collect this item that allows you to write a message on the ground, and then you have to sync up and make sure you're both in the same area, and you have to have a code plugged in. It's weird, but once you get that working, it's a lot of fun to kind of walk through and play through the game together. Because you're kind of like a a mentor through the Dark Souls verse, and you can kind of help them along. That's a lot of fun.
What didn't you like about Dark Souls?
What didn't I like? Did I tell you about this time I went through and to the graveyard and fought skeletons for like 3 hours? And no,
just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Yeah. No, I mean that was very frustrating when I first did it, but I didn't like. I do wish the syncing up with friends was a little bit easier. As much as fun as I do enjoy the combat in it, I never did find the fighting other players that compelling, or at least as far as it came to especially ranged weapons. I always felt that, like, if I had a bow or a sorcery kind of thing, I always felt like it was very easy for a melee person, if I was kind of combating them, to kind of just dodge my attack. So I always felt like really annoyed at that. It works really well when you're kind of going through like NPC enemy, just enemies in the game. But I always found that kind of annoying. It seems like Elden Ring might be improving that. I'm not sure. Just looking at the videos, it looks like the ranged stuff looks a little bit more interesting. So we'll see. But yeah, so I think that or at least the original character customization in Dark Souls is a bit silly. I don't know if you've seen some of the monster creations that you can create in the randomized character creation tool, but it's also kind of funny. So I'm not sure if I hate it. I actually kind of secretly love it. But you can create abominations, which is amazing.
Kill me, father.
Yeah.
Kill me.
Yeah, save me. Yeah.
So,
Oh no.
I'm sorry. I should probably port it for those listening, just to sort of just maybe tie it back into a little bit of Dark Souls. Dark Souls provokes a lot of anger, and as we're recording this, I have a bit of anger right now. Not necessarily at Dark Souls, but literally the night we're recording this, it's the night of the Formula One World Championship decider,
Oh no.
and everything. And I feel so fucking angry at how everything has ended. And I was just looking for my phone just after Denman answered there now about what he didn't like, and I just felt anger. And I'm just looking at a joke right now from Reddit, and it's just about Toto Wolff. Denman won't get, but like it's about Toto Wolff waiting in the parking lot for an FIA official. Not so much with a baseball bat, but with a Bose headset. That won't make any sense to anyone who doesn't like or doesn't watch Formula One, but it will if you watched last week or the race before the title decider in Saudi Arabia. So, if you think Dark Souls provokes anger, you've not watched Formula One, and you've definitely not watched Formula One and a season like this. So that's the first time I've gotten a laugh out of Formula One today, put it like that. Anyway, completely unrelated to what I've just said. Back to Dark Souls.
Yeah. To more pleasant topics.
More pleasant and happy topics. Something that isn't as anger provoking as Formula One, let's say, with Dark Souls. What would you change from a sort of design perspective then?
Interesting. Well, I'm not a designer, but interested in design. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, well, the multiplayer thing, I think, is its own thing. You could just make it a little bit easier in a UX kind of way. But for the ranged combat, yeah, I don't know. Like it was something I was kind of thinking of when I was getting frustrated with it. I was like, oh, how would you do this? Because it's really easy to kind of like tell. Like you don't want to overpower a ranged player because they obviously have the distance. And yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. I haven't really thought about it too much. But I've been thinking, it's like a funny story. I didn't actually mention this, but like I've been slowly working on a card game of my own that is kind of loosely based around the idea of that kind of combat dance, and inspired by Dark Souls. And that was one of the things I was kind of trying to solve as well. But I mean, the challenge there is trying to bring a a digital video game kind of mechanic into an analog kind of card game, and how you kind of match those kind of mechanics and make it feel like the same mood. But and that was the kind of thing. Is like, okay, how do you balance this kind of ranged weapon? Because otherwise, if it's too easy to kind of hit, you can kind of stand back and just kind of pick away at them slowly. But also you don't want that range to kind of close down, because then you're at a negative. And anyway, it's interesting. I don't know the answer. If I had the answer, I guess I'd be a famous game designer. But it's intriguing. It's a problem that I didn't think was quite solved with just the multiplayer aspect of it. That I'd be intrigued, and I hope they've kind of done something interesting in Elden Ring. So I'm intrigued, and if they do, that'd be amazing. I'd love to see it.
Something I've just realised, actually, and it's not actually on my original question list. Like, we've sort of extensively gone over sort of things like Dark Souls Remastered and Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring. The funny thing is, we've actually not touched upon how different Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 feel compared to the original Dark Souls, especially in regards to Dark Souls 2, because like that is still considered a pretty good game, but a lot of fans don't really consider that a Dark Souls game, basically. So like touch upon that, like how you find those games anyway. Like,
I'm trying to remember, because I haven't played 2 or 3 since I beat them when they came out, because I'd been so obsessed with Dark Souls Prepare to Die edition. So it's like, as soon as 2 and 3 came out, I was like, I had to play them. I think, if I remember correctly, there was something like, I feel like, and I may be wrong about this, so it's like, it's like, nobody quote me on this, but like, I felt like maybe the lore of Dark Souls 2 didn't feel as cohesive. I may be totally wrong with that, but maybe it was a bit of, like, I don't know, like, I remember like there was this area, I forget how far in the game it was, but there's this area where you go in and there's these big, I think it was like these kind of like blue, like big blue giant kind of soldiers, and you're kind of on these big pedestals, and it's like very, very open. There was something about, like, when I came into that level, it felt a bit empty. So maybe it was a bit of like the level design there, that it felt a little bit empty, and maybe that, I don't know. I mean, I still remember enjoying it. I remember people at the time kind of complaining about it and saying that it felt a little bit weird, because I know the mechanics changed a little bit, but I can't remember which one, what those details were. I should have brushed up on this before I jumped on the call, but maybe that was it. Maybe it didn't feel as big. Like, my sense of like, this world is bigger than me, maybe it didn't feel as big with that one. But I also remember really, like, when jumping into Dark Souls 3, really, really enjoy it. Did it have the same kind of negative attention? My interpretation of it was like, okay, people loved Dark Souls 1, and anytime you have something that everybody really, really loves, you often have, like, for no good reason, unless, if it's just on par with it, like, people will be like, wow, it's not as good. I don't know if it was that, but I enjoyed the games. What did they do? I forget exactly what they did. They did something with the health. Was it the health bar? Or was 2 the one where you had the blue focus bar as well? Was it focus?
Yeah,
I forget what the
name
of it.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's what it was. And no, I remember enjoying that. Or was that 3? I can't remember if that was 2 or 3, because you had this thing where you could change stance. And the stance, then you added the focus. I think this was 3. Oh, I feel like
I think another thing as well is that Miyazaki actually wasn't involved a whole lot in this game. Like, he directed 1 and 3, but he didn't direct 2. I think he was maybe a producer for 2, but I also think a lot of that is down to the fact that he was directly involved as director on Bloodborne at that time as well.
Yeah, that would make sense. And maybe, I mean, if that's the case, maybe that's why 2 felt a little bit more, maybe less cohesive narrative wise. I don't know. I feel like I was like, I last played this when it came out, so like, I feel like I'm like, is that actually how I felt about it? I don't remember, but I remember it feeling a little bit less cohesive narrative wise, but maybe not.
So top 3 Souls games, and I mean specifically Dark Souls games, what would they be?
Okay.
Dark Souls 1 would be at the top, I would guess. How would you rank 2 and 3?
Yeah, I think Dark Souls 1, definitely my favorite. I think because it was the first one I played. I probably spent the most time in, mainly because 4 hours was in a graveyard. No, no.
You're never letting that go, are you?
No, I'm never letting that go. No. Yeah, Dark Souls 1 was a lot of fun. I think it's the one I played the most. I think I enjoyed Dark Souls 3 and then Dark Souls 2. And we'll see where Elden Ring... Although... Are they calling Elden Ring a Dark Souls game? Is it like actual Dark Souls verse, or is it?
I don't know. Like, that's the thing, because like Elden Ring feels a bit blurry. Like,
I couldn't tell if it was a Dark Souls game, like same world.
It's not a Dark Souls game set in the same world or same story or same lore and all that there, because it's George R. R. Martin who's basically sort of provided some of the outline and the original outline for the sort of lore and the world and all out there, and then he basically said that from go nuts with it from there, have it, shape it into whatever you want it to be. It's not Dark Souls, and it's not directly Dark Souls or anything like that there. Maybe mechanically, gameplay wise, it's more in line with Dark Souls, but in terms of lore and story and all that there, it's not directly related to Dark Souls at all.
Okay, so it's kind of got its own world building and lore. Okay, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that sounds interesting.
And then in terms from that, like, what would be the top 3 Souls-like games from? Like, obviously Souls 1 at the top, I would guess. Yeah. And this is me assuming here. I'm guessing Bloodborne would be 2.
It's a tough one between Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne. Which one's my favorite? I might. Yeah, I mean, I know I said Dark Souls was is what my favorite game was, which jumped me on this, would kick this whole thing off. And it probably is, because it was the first game of the series. So it has that extra love in its heart. So, but a really, really, really close second would be Bloodborne. It's like almost on par. Then I think maybe Dark Souls 3, then Sekiro, then Dark Souls 2. And I haven't played Demon Souls, so which I need to fix at some point in the future, and then we'll see where that lands. But Demon Souls, the remake for PS5, looks gorgeous, and I really, really want to play it.
I got Demon Souls along with my PS5, plural, and that's why a lot of people can't buy PS5s. I bought
you're just hoarding them.
I bought plural PS5s. I'm hoarding all the plural PS5s. I've still yet to touch Demon Souls, but I love what Bluepoint does, and I love what they did with Shadow of the Colossus remake. And I definitely want to play it. But my arachnophobia is just sort of.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. That's gonna be fun going through that again.
Yeah.
That's great. Fun. So in that regard, then, what do you think has been the legacy of Dark Souls over the past 10 years? Then, this may be an easy one to answer, but just sort of.
I mean, I think you touched upon it earlier, but it's the fan based love over diving into the lore, and because it kind of isn't laid out in such a direct way, it's like it kind of like, to me, it like harkened back to the like old memories of like before the internet, when you were playing games like Nintendo era, and you're like, all you had was to reference was like your friend's knowledge and like the friend who had like the Nintendo power, or something like that, and you're just like, okay, that's how you got your information on like tips and tricks and other various things. And Dark Souls kind of gave a new generation that kind of same feeling when it came to the lore, but also kind of like, oh yeah, if you go down this here, there's a secret like item down here. Did you try this? Oh no, you didn't know about that? Here, and you kind of like can share stories. obviously we have the internet and you can kind of dive into that and look into it, but I guess because it was so, I don't know, there was something about it that kind of like gave that. And I think with the lore, you have all these YouTube video, YouTubers kind of doing, these kind of deep dives into trying to solve the lore, and there's kind of speculation and other various things of like, what does this mean, and that kind of just adds, and it just builds into this kind of community aspect. And it lives beyond the game in that way, and it lives in.
Honorable mentions, go for it.
Yeah, honorable mentions. I'll probably talk about maybe a couple games that I've been enjoying playing recently. Probably, let's see, Disco Elysium has been a one that's been really, really fun. I actually need to finish it. I'd kind of been in the middle of it and then kind of put it on hold because I was busy with a lot of stuff. But I still need to dive into it. Again, I think it's one of these games kind of coming back to great world building and narrative. What a game that kind of just presents story and world building and narrative and to the player in such a interesting way. Obviously that game's a lot more of your kind of, I guess you could say, more classic narrative game, as in it often there's a lot of dialogue. But the way that they decided to kind of merge that in with RPG mechanics and dice rolling and chance and stuff and how you're kind of have these stats that are kind of based on your character, in interesting ways, not just strength and dexterity, but it's all this other stuff like Inland Empire and other stuff. It's kind of these kind of weirder kind of elements. But then it's almost like most of the game you're having dialogues with your own self and how you've built the your character and yeah, it's just fascinating. But what's so at least for me, so that's interesting in itself, but what's so fascinating about that game is, again, they've built such a cohesive world kind of behind the scenes, that everything you're interacting, whether it's a map of this world or a history, or you're talking to this person, you recognize the uniform they're wearing is referencing one of the old revolutionaries of this Civil War that happened. They don't tell you everything in the moment, but you can kind of start to kind of pull in the history of this world that they've built. And it makes a lot of sense because hearing back on the developers that made that game, they talk about how the game was originally a book, and how it was a writer, and they were trying to find a way to and I guess the book didn't I don't know if it did well or not, but they were trying to find a way to make something, and the book didn't kind of really work out or something. I have to take my word on that. But then they decided to make a video game out of it, and they figured out a way to kind of do that. So they had this real rich lore and history in the world, and it's saturated into everything. So it makes it feel like you're in this thing that's much bigger than yourself, and you're kind of left as a player to kind of discover the bits of and history that you want. Anyway, that game is brilliant. I need to dive into it, properly, but it makes so much sense that it won all these narrative awards and various things. Let's see. Another game that I've really been enjoying lately is, let's see, Sable. I really enjoyed from an art direction kind of sense point, but also mood. You don't have to do a lot in the game is, I don't say this in a negative way, but the game is relatively simple, as in a lot of it just kind of just like driving through this kind of world, and it's got this like real sense of like exploration. It's not really any combat, or like at least that I've run into, and you're kind of just exploring and you're finding these things, and it's just like real sense. And the art style is really unique, and you feel like you're in a Mobius, comic, which is great. So that's been a lot of fun. And what's another game? I've been playing a lot of Hunt Showdown. I don't know if you're familiar with this game.
Oh, I know of Hunt Showdown because it's fucking full of spiders.
Yeah, and that game has such a good mood, like, and the art direction of the game is great, and the sound design of that game is great. Like, it's, oh man, like even like the first time I jumped into the main menu, and they have the main song, and it's just like these like these people singing, and it's like feels like kind of Western kind of meets like Louisiana meets it's really good, and also a really fun game, a real good blend of like kind of battle royale meets like Monster Hunter kind of game. So I've been playing with that with a few friends as well. It's been a lot of fun.
The other sort of honorable mention I sort of want to pick on as well is something that you actually mentioned in passing once or twice during Dark Souls, Ocarina of Time.
Oh yeah, Ocarina of Time. So yeah, I love that game. When would I have been playing that? Would have been maybe before high school. When did Ocarina of Time come out? But yeah, okay. So that would have been middle school. I played that game a lot. And I think that was the first game where I jumped in and it felt like this world is so big. It was the first game I felt like it really felt like it captured that kind of open world game feeling. Like, looking back on it now, the world feels tiny. But when you could like go out, when you got out of the forest area and into the kind of Hyrule fields, like, it just felt so expansive. And again, it's like one of these games where you kind of like you're encouraged to kind of explore, find these little holes in the ground, or all these things. But yeah, the atmosphere, and it just felt, because I mean, obviously it's like this fantasy game, but it felt so magical. And yeah, I mean, the story was great. Like, combat was fun, puzzles, and the classic temples, and it's just great. I love the Zelda series. And I think what was interesting, like, even though I didn't enjoy it as much, Majora's Mask, which came after, I thought was really, really good. And the fact that I really enjoyed how they kind of reinvented the wheel, and they added this kind of new mechanic, the time mechanic, and you had now, and that felt really interesting in itself. Like when you kind of jump in and it's like, okay, now I've got to kind of memorize, or people have certain schedules and times, and I have to be here on this certain time to do this thing, and I guess and you have this kind of like death mechanic in there as well. It's like, okay, when you got to warp back in time, and then you do something and it changes the world, and or you collect an item and then you warp back in time. You're kind of doing this Groundhog Day kind of scenario. Anyway, yeah, I love those games. So good. When do we get a new Zelda?
Well, that's the $1 million question. By the time this comes out, you're looking at months to a year maybe at this point with Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah. I still need to beat Breath of the Wild. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm at Ganon's castle. And then
Yeah. How far in Ganon's castle are you? That's the question.
Just at the gates. I haven't gotten into Ganon's castle, so maybe I still have quite a bit to do.
Just a little bit. Just
a little bit.
Just the tiniest bit. Just the tiniest bit.
Okay. Yeah. Oh no.
So, top 3 games ever. What would they be? Obviously, Dark Souls at the top.
Yeah, Dark Souls at the top. Ocarina of Time probably number 2. Age of Empires 2 probably number 3. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Age of Empires, Age of Kings is one of my favorite games as well. Oh man, that's also a close second with it's very, 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 very tight with Ocarina of Time. But yeah, Age of Empires series I adore. The new the new what are the definitive editions that it did on Steam are really good. I've really been enjoying that. I had been playing that a lot actually the past couple years, off and on. And you know, some of my coworkers and I would get together for a few games as well. But yeah, I played a lot of, though I probably never, I was probably never actually good at multiplayer. I definitely spent a lot of time playing multiplayer and trying to learn build orders and doing all that stuff. But that's tough. That's some hardcore stuff.
I think the correlation I'm getting here is, at least in regards to Souls games and Age of Empires, is there's a lot of strategy to be involved. How do you sort of go in with that sort of strategy mindset? Anyway, personally, with these sorts of games like Age of Empires, like Dark Souls, or any sort of similar games like in strategy games or even Souls-like games.
Yeah. I mean, I like as a player, like I definitely enjoy games that I enjoyed a lot of different types of games. I mean, but when it comes to like Souls and Age of Empires, that challenge that like you're given essentially this kind of like puzzle or this challenge that's like to solve, and then you obviously you have the tutorials to tell you the basic mechanics, but then you're kind of left to kind of like become an expert at these things, and I think but things like games like Age of Empires, like you can be the kind of player that wants to jump in and you just create a bot match, and then you kind of build up this huge castle, and then or you play with your friends and you spend like an hour kind of building up stuff, and then you try to fight each other. So there's different ways to play and find enjoyment. Like I even think like looking back at original Age of Empires, like the first time I played that, my brothers and I, we didn't have Age of Empires, but a friend of ours did. And we would go over to his house and we would spend, I don't know, hours building up. Like we'd each get like 30 minutes or something to build up an area of the map and kind of build up this huge thing. And then the other person would get and build up their area of the map. And then our friend would go in and they're like, okay, now is their challenge to beat the game. Essentially a certain amount of time. So there's one way to play. Anyway, I'm kind of getting off track there. But so I think just given the challenge of like the strategy element of trying to solve the puzzle, and again, I am not an expert compared to the kind of people, the folks that kind of go in and play these games and have spreadsheets and various things like that, but and do kind of like build orders and experimentation. But I really enjoy, it's definitely, as a game style, I really enjoy that. I guess, yeah. So I'm not an expert. I'm definitely not really good at these things, but it is fun. I enjoy a game that can do that well. So, as far as like my work is concerned, we just released a new DLC for Empire of Sin, Make It Count. So that's pretty cool. Introducing like loan sharks and fixers into the game, and there's this kind of precinct, so you can kind of control the neighborhoods in these kind of precinct fashion, and it kind of adds a little bit more complexity and strategy to the kind of like empire building kind of layer of the game, which has been a lot of fun. So that's kind of freshly out, so that's exciting. And then I'm also, I've been doing, so my website's denmanrooke.com, and I just have all, my art on there. So I do a lot of stuff for Magic the Gathering as well, which has been a lot of fun. I've really been enjoying doing that over the years. And Yeah, I'm also currently a board member at Immert. So if you're an Irish game dev, look into that. It's a community organization looking at like pushing the industry forward here in the Republic of Ireland. That's been cool. I'll be my term on the board is wrapping up this year, so that's fine. But I'm it's definitely still something to keep an eye out for. Yeah. What other shit do I have? That's about it. I'm on Twitter at Denman Rooke. I talk mainly art, but also politics and throwing shade at NFTs and various things like that.
To be fair, who doesn't? Who doesn't at this
Yeah,
point?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, that's a space that isn't. I post a little bit of art on there. I'm on Instagram as well at Denman Rooke. But if you just want art, you can find me on ArtStation. But yeah, I guess that's my shit.
Thanks for listening to My Favourite Game, a podcast by PlayDiaries.com where people from the games industry come on to talk of their favourite game. If you want to listen to future episodes of My Favourite Game, as well as press play before they go live publicly on Play Diaries and other podcast platforms, please consider becoming a $2 tier podcast early access patron to our Patreon at patreon.com/playdiaries. Next week, the first of our 2-part season finale, Jordan Bradley on Neopets. Until next week, bye-bye.